If someone wakes you up before you're ready to get up, you'd be a little mad. Now imagine that you're woken up 89 years before you're ready, and they don't even have the decency to have a cup of coffee waiting for you. Murderous, right? Probably about as egregious as the critics, because Passengers is not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies and a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Every now and then, when you're flipping through the channels, you stumble upon a movie, you sit there and go, okay, I know this film. You know, you never actually watched it, but you know of it because you've seen the trailers of it, you've seen clips. And then you start to watch it, and you're like, okay, this isn't that bad. And then you look at the critic score, you sit there and go, am I missing something? Well, that kind of happened to us because once upon a time, we were sitting in New York City, flipping through the channels in our hotel room, and Passengers was on the TV. And we started to watch it a little bit and like, this actually looks pretty good. And then we saw the critic score. And now we're here to defend that film. And here to join me to go down this road, my lovely wife, Carrie. Carrie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, as long as you don't wake me up without a cup of coffee 89 years early. Yeah.
There are things to be said about the characters in this film. The worst of them is that you woke someone up without coffee. Like really, without coffee. Like, how? How?
But they could have made an omelet. I mean,
he couldn't afford an omelet. But the thing is with this film, and I fully understand that the internet is a jerk. I'm not saying like individual people are jerks. I'm saying the internet as a whole is a jerk. Because for some reason, the internet likes to poke fun at both Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. And now you're going to put the two of them in a film together. It makes sense that for some reason or other, this film got hated, and I don't understand it. Because I'm a sci-fi geek and I love a really cool concept. This is a very cool concept. But when we started watching, what were your thoughts?
Well, I don't want to sound like one of those jerks on the internet. And I know I'm here to say nice things, but I don't know. To me, it kind of felt like, what was that movie with the couple that was locked in a room together?
You're talking about The Immaculate Room, which was episode 78 for us, which kind of feels like forever. But yes, no, on Netflix, The Immaculate Room.
So, I don't know. I mean, again, like two people trapped together, and at first you're wondering there's like no chemistry, right? It just kind of seemed like kind of the same kind of thing. I mean, you're rooting for them. You want to see a relationship bud, but it just, I don't know. I think it fell flat, even though, I don't know. For me, it was just like, I wanted to see more. I wanted more romance.
See, I think
less sci-fi, less things go boom, more trees.
See, I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting episode because I actually liked this film. So
I know.
And I have a feeling we're going to have one of those really, really good discussions where one of us likes it and one of us is kind of on the fence. But before we go down that road to figure out just where the middle ground is between both of our opinions, it is time to take Passengers and trailerize it.
In the middle of a 120-year journey through the stars, a meteor causes a malfunction in the sleep pod of just one man. Now awake, with more than a lifetime journey ahead of him, Jim Preston finds himself alone, aboard a spaceship with no one to talk to except an android who will serve you endless amounts of booze. No one to bug you. No job taking up a third or more of your day. The ability to sleep whenever and wherever you want. Endless free time to pursue whatever your heart desires. Paradise. But that's not good enough for some, apparently. Now, Jim decides to wake some rando girl up in the hopes that she's not some colossal buzzkill, because freedom and tranquility just doesn't cut it in space. Well, at least he picked someone who could afford bacon with her breakfast. Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence star in Passengers. Rated PG-13 for Please Don't Wake the Girl.
At least not for another 13 years, you know?
Right.
Let someone sleep.
13? No, try like 80 years.
No, I know.
The girl had 89 years left on her journey before she was supposed to wake up. So if you wake me up 89 years before I'm supposed to wake up, they're going to be an ass whooping, especially if there ain't no coffee.
I would be some pissed too. Like, I mean, yeah. Let's get into this.
All right.
Let's do this.
The movie stars Chris Pratt, Jennifer Lawrence, Lawrence Fishburne, Michael Sheen, and Andy Garcia for about 15 seconds. However, there is an almost starring for this one. This film was in development before it started to get made. And in that initial development, Brian Kirk was supposed to direct the film. He of episodes of Dexter, Luther, Game of Thrones, and Penny Dreadful. The couple in that version was supposed to be Keanu Reeves and Rachel McAdams.
Oh my God. I would have loved to have seen that.
Now,
that should have happened.
I can imagine why Rachel McAdams maybe backed out for whatever reason, probably a scheduling thing. But imagine if, people sit there and go, oh, hey, it's The Notebook in space. Sorry, in space.
It's not like it's, one of the Ryans. Like,
no, very true. Very, very true.
Keanu Reeves would have been brilliant in this. And I think that was mainly my problem.
But Rachel McAdams wasn't the only person initially attached to this film beforehand. Also, once attached to play the role of Aurora, Reese Witherspoon and Emily Blunt. So if I'm putting the three of them in front of you, Rachel McAdams, Reese Witherspoon, and Emily Blunt, of those three, who would you have rather seen in that role?
With Keanu?
Yes. Or even with Chris Pratt?
No. With Keanu. You know what? I think either Reese Witherspoon or actually, you know what? Emily Blunt is a doll as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, unless you're watching Edge of Tomorrow, then she's going to kick your ass.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, apparently, Adele, the singer, once told Jennifer Lawrence not to take this role because the love story was, quote unquote, similar to Twilight. And Jennifer Lawrence has since said that she should have listened to Adele.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked Jennifer Lawrence in this. There was really nothing unlikable about her character. I thought she played it well. But I think any one of those actresses could have
absolutely,
been brilliant.
Yeah. The movie was directed by Morton Tildum, and I hope I got your name right. And if I didn't, remember, I'm just an idiot in a basement with a microphone. He previously directed The Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch, but has not directed a film since. However, this film was almost directed by, and here's the list of directors who were either considered or once attached to it. We mentioned Brian Kirk beforehand. Gabriel Muccino, Mark Foster, and David Fincher. And that would have been fascinating, but I think it would have been a very, very different film. It was written by John Space. However, it is noted that the original ending of this script is very different from the ending that we saw on screen. I don't know all the details of how it's different, but apparently it's a very different ending, at least originally written. But all of that did not affect the box office. The film had a budget of $110 million. Domestically, it only grossed $100 million. Not bad, but a money loser domestically. But worldwide, made $303 million. So not too bad. Not too bad. When it was released on the December 23rd, 2016 weekend, so Christmas release, it debuted at number 3 with $14.8 million. The number 1 film that week was Rogue One, a Star Wars story, in its second week with $64 million. You damn right, Rogue One.
That's not bad if it's going up against, and it was still number 3.
Right. Number 2 was the debut of Sing with $35 million. So family film over the holiday, Sing is going to do well, but Rogue One, let me tell you, best Star Wars film. Also debuting that week, Why Him debuted at number 4 with $11 million, and Assassin's Creed debuted with $10 million in number 5. There were some accolades for this film, and none of them are bad, which is always a positive sign. At the 89th Academy Awards, Thomas Newman was nominated for Best Original Score, lost to La La Land, which is a musical, so of course it's going to lose. And Guy Hendricks Diaz and Gene Sardana were nominated for Best Production Design. They also lost to La La Land. I'll give you Thomas Newman losing to a musical for Best Score, but production design? La La Land? La La Land. Production design over this film set in space with a full, like, I don't care what your thoughts are on the characters. This film looked gorgeous. The set design was spot on. The ship felt so real. Lost to La La Land. I got a problem with the Academy Awards on that one.
I agree. I mean, definitely, like even, the floating scene.
Oh, there was some cool,
like that
cool
was
stuff. Yeah.
Cool. And the layers to it, right? Like, cause you can, yeah. And that spotter that they had on
To
them,
La La
very
Land.
Cool. Yeah.
Frickin' La La Land.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing against La La Land, but for production design, that's criminal. That's what that is. At the 43rd Saturn Awards, the film was nominated for Best Sci-Fi Film, lost to Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and you damn right, Rogue One, Best Star Wars Film. Chris Pratt was nominated for Best Actor, lost to Ryan Reynolds for Deadpool. Jennifer Lawrence was nominated for Best Actress, lost to Mary Elizabeth Winstead for 10 Cloverfield Lane. Thomas Newman was nominated for Best Music, lost to La La Land again. Guy Hendricks Diaz was nominated for Best Production Design, lost to the BFG. And at the 21st Art Directors Guild Awards, finally, someone got it right. Guy Hendricks Diaz won for excellence in production design for a fantasy film. Cheers to you, Art Directors Guild Awards. You finally got it right. But the reason why we are here is the critics. Over at Metacritic, this film has a Metascore of 41. Our baseline for what we look at over at Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score is 63%. The tomatometer is 30. However, we're getting bigger numbers here at Letterboxd. It has a 2.8 star rating, giving it a 56% score. At the Movie Database, it has a 69% rating, and at imdb.com, it has a 70% rating, giving this film an aggravated aggregate of 54.83. That means it's still a college fail. But 30% being the lowest score from the critics over at Rotten Tomatoes, whether you like the actors or not, whether you like the characters or not, is that score too harsh?
You know what I think it is? I mean, as a whole, you were absolutely right that the movie looked stunning.
Mm-hmm.
The writing, the dialogue was really well done. I don't know, like I don't know really what could have changed except for maybe the lead character.
All right. Well, let's get to the breakdown. Let's find out exactly what's good, what's not, what worked, and what didn't. Chris Pratt as Jim Preston. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would have gone with Keanu.
Okay, but they couldn't have
I
Keanu
know.
in the end.
Sadness.
I guess he was too busy doing John Wick things.
You know what? I just, and don't get me wrong, I really like Chris Pratt in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mhm.
I really do. But I found in this one, he just didn't work. I don't, whether it was like, he was kind of like, I don't want to say boring to watch, but the comedy part or the part where he was completely alone could have been better. It was a little dull.
I mean,
It fell
I can
flat,
see
I
that.
think.
I can
Yeah.
see that. I mean, you take a look at films where your main character is isolated, right? And The Immaculate Room, I think, is maybe a very good analogy at that point because, I mean, I could not get over the guy in The Immaculate Room. I really couldn't. I agree with you. You take a look at a film like Castaway with Tom Hanks, and, you know, obviously, yes, you've got Ron Howard directing, you got Tom Hanks alone on an island, and Tom Hanks acting with the volleyball is still. But the thing is, you got into the psyche of that, right? And the thing is, you can't spend the whole time in Jim kind of breaking down. But even if you take a film like Moon, starring Sam Rockwell, where he's literally isolated by himself on the moon, right? Like, you have templates for what you can do. But I think the problem is that this film is only allowed to spend about 40 to 50% of its time on Jim and his situation and the point where he gets to where he finally wakes up Aurora.
Right. And I mean, again, I guess I just wanted to see a bit more comedy. Sam Rockwell can always do comedy, even if he's serious. There's just something very likable and charismatic about Sam Rockwell. And I feel in this movie, Chris Pratt just didn't, it just landed flat. Like he just didn't have that charisma. And then, you know, you wind up like, I was really kind of angry with him for waking Aurora up. Like you know, damn right she had every right to be mad because really, how dare he? You know what I mean? I get that he was bored. I get that he was intrigued by meeting her, but it still didn't make it right. And yeah, it didn't sit well.
I mean, here comes the conundrum, right? Where you have a character and you're not supposed to like this character eventually, right? At first, you empathize with the character. He's woken up completely alone and not of his fault. And he can't get the pod to get him back to sleep. So it's literally just him and the android bartender as played by Michael Sheen. But the thing is, and I think it did an okay job of showing passage of time. Maybe not necessarily a year's worth of passage of time. You know, like I know I can grow a beard faster than Chris Pratt's character in this, if that's what it took to get a year. Like after a year of growing a beard, my beard's going to be like ZZ Top. But the thing is, Jim is not at the end of this, or at least in the second act of this, a good person. It's an understandable choice that he made. And I think that's the thing too. Jim Preston really is in a really hard situation. He gets to the point where his isolation has him thinking about literally launching himself out the air dock. Like he does not want to be alone anymore. He can't handle it. The idea of isolation has got him to that point. So there's a lot about Jim that one could understand, right? I think anyone in that situation, knowing that there is if there's 5,000 passengers and Jim is the only one awake, there's 4,999 people that you could talk to. I get it. And I think I would understand more if Jim tried to wake up a few more people, right? Not just one person, because that feels a little stalkery. Just a little bit. The other thing, too, is that we didn't see him looking really at anyone else's files. It's like he flipped through, found Aurora's and said, she cute. Well, I'm just going to obsess on her for a while. If we saw him looking at other people's files and maybe trying to talk to the interview clips so it felt like he was talking to different people. But, and again, I understand that the film can only be so long. But I think we needed to see more of that, like montage that a little bit, right? Show him looking at a few clips. Show him at least trying to connect to different people. And maybe it's Aurora's the one that he keeps coming back to.
Exactly. And I think that's where the comedy could have come in as well. Like you could have kind of laughed along with him.
I don't think it needed comedy, though.
Well, I mean, it definitely needed something. I feel like his descent into madness was just dark, and it was sad. I'll grant you that if he was alone, maybe he's not going to make the best of decisions. But again, like, it's like you said, one person, he woke up Aurora.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, again, it was almost like a stalker, and she had no say in the matter, and yeah, I kind of felt bad for her. And I guess at the end, like it came around nicely. It was tied up with a little bow.
I mean, I will also agree that Chris Pratt wasn't maybe given a character in Jim that was going to emote more, right? Jim kind of feels like this almost one tone character all the way through, right? Like maybe we need to see him like trying to connect more to Arthur, even though it is an android, like leaning on those, right? Like there should have been something where like he's just like mindlessly talking to Arthur, and Arthur's like, perhaps you should go to sleep, but I don't want to be alone. Like we don't really see too much of the effect of isolation on him. And again, I understand movies can only be and should only be so long. I get it. And I'm not advocating for a passenger series. I am not. This movie does not need the series treatment. But I think the big thing here is that Jim turns out to be someone who makes poor decisions. And if you don't like Jim, then Chris Pratt has kind of done the job that you need him to do. So I guess the question is, do you not like Chris Pratt in this role, or do you just not like Jim as a character? And if that's the case, did Chris Pratt do the job that Jim needed him to do?
That's a great question. I found myself thinking just that. It's like maybe because it was Chris Pratt, you have that weight of expectation that he's at least going to make you laugh at one point, right? Or, even he'll have that kind of like leadership, charisma, or like that take charge. But I found as soon as Aurora woke up, like she was very much driving the bus or flying the ship, and I mean, that was great. She was definitely very, very smart. And I think I really liked her backstory as well. I know we're not talking about her yet, but we didn't really get a whole lot of his background. Like,
no, we knew that he was a mechanic, and basically his whole thing is that because of his skills, because of his mechanical skills, which does explain a lot of why Jim can do what he can do on the ship. The company basically said, cool, okay, we're going to pay for you to take this journey. You basically get a free ride so you can start a new life on the new planet, which is why he's, for lack of a better term, riding this ship steerage, in that he's not a gold class customer. He can't afford the good meals. He can't afford the good cup of coffee. He is Leo DiCaprio in Titanic at this point. And Jennifer Lawrence is basically Kate Winslet, if you're looking for that Titanic type reference, minus the Billy Zane out of it all. Thank God. But he really is kind of the Leo DiCaprio in this, if you're looking for that kind of comparable. Doesn't have the money. He's there literally riding a ship to the stars based on his skills and what he can bring to this new world. He's looking for a fresh start. He's almost like Tom Cruise in Far and Away. But we didn't need much more of a backstory because, again, compared to Aurora and her backstory, Jim makes sense. Jim is not, for lack of a better term, sophisticated. He's not well-educated. And maybe the decisions that he makes in real life are not well thought out to begin with. We just have to grow to learn that along the way. But let's get to Jennifer Lawrence, who played Aurora Lane. Your thoughts?
I really liked her. I liked her take charge attitude. I liked that she wasn't an easy pushover, right? Like the whole love dynamic, the whole romance that, like as soon as she wakes up, that's where they're headed.
Yeah.
But she fought it very well.
See, I don't understand why the internet gets on her case. I really don't. Because she is a very good actress. Like, The Hunger Games is exactly what The Hunger Games is because Jennifer Lawrence brought it to that role. Katniss Everdeen is that way because Jennifer Lawrence breathed life into the character. I don't hold the X-Men films against her in her role as Mystique because there's a lot wrong with some of those X-Men films, and the way that Mystique is written is one of them. But that's not Jennifer Lawrence's fault. It's not. The Silver Linings Playbook, good film. Can't go wrong there. Here, Aurora Lane is a really cool character because she's, for lack of a better term, she's a Nepo baby writer because her father is this world-renowned writer, and she's basically famous because he would write about her. And now she's here looking to carve her own name out in the literary world, and she's got this great story, and she's gold class passenger, and she's Kate Winslet, or Nicole Kidman in Far and Away. Aurora Lane is an interesting character because Jennifer Lawrence makes her interesting, right? You could not just put any, spur of the moment actress in this. Like, I don't think this film would fly if you had someone like Sydney Sweeney in this role today. It would not work. Jennifer Lawrence is a really good actress. And the moments that she has in this, like at first, okay, I get it. She wakes up, she kind of does the same things that Jim did, trying to get into the ship or to onto the deck and all that kind of stuff. And, trying to find some kind of, at least normalcy to kind of get into while she's fighting off, a little less isolation than Jim had to deal with for a year, but still isolated to that point. And then the turn happens. And for the record, we're spoiling the crap out of this film. We probably already have at this point, but just know. Just know you should have watched the film beforehand. The turn happens. And the look of abject horror on her face. Like she just realized who she's been seeing and who she's been in love with at this point. Like that moment and the rawness of some of those emotions. Like the scene where she shows up in his room to kick his ass. Like that is horrific on like so many levels. And it's so like visceral.
And she played it so well.
Right?
Like she was great. It wasn't just like, that she's gone crazy and psycho. No, she like was justifiably pissed. There's no other way of putting it.
Well, I mean,
but she played it so well. Oh my God, yeah. I mean, like I said, the storyline, she had every right to. Like, what do? It's not like one or the other can leave. You're the only two people on the ship.
Right.
So
there's Arthur.
Okay. He was, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a second. But no, like there's the moment where she like picks up the wrench and she's about to bring it down on his head. And it's that moment of like, I will. And like, that's the thing. And I think this is kind of where your Chris Pratt factor comes in. There are moments in this film where it's like Chris Pratt could have been a bit more emotive, like show some more remorse than just like sad puppy dog who just chewed a slipper. It's kind of what Chris Pratt feels like after the turn. He feels like the puppy dog who chewed a slipper, and the puppy knows that they did wrong, but they still want to be petted and loved. Jennifer Lawrence had the space to show like that raw dagger in the gut hurt through all of that. And I think that's why, like, I don't know if I'd want anyone else in that role. Rachel McAdams, maybe, absolutely. But Jennifer Lawrence really did kind of seal the deal on Aurora Lane.
Oh, definitely. No, she was brilliant. Yeah, I wouldn't have replaced her, and I think you're right. Like, perfectly astute when you'd mentioned just his puppy dog, or it's almost kind of like he knew he did wrong, right? But where's the sincerity in his apology? Like, there was no like raw emotion. There was no point where he tried to explain himself. Like, it was just kind of like, I was caught. Like,
yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, at least the character didn't, try to be like, didn't pull a Mark Wahlberg, right? And, like, what? No, I didn't do that. Like, really? No, just no. Also, don't put Mark Wahlberg in this role. But still, it was just lost little puppy dog.
Yeah.
And Jennifer Lawrence was ready to kick the puppy. And that's kind of where you're at that. But even the point where Lawrence Fishburne comes out, and he's woken up, and she has that line of like, it's murder. And he doesn't disagree with her.
Well, you know what? To draw back to that, I think at that moment when Chris Pratt was about to get his ass kicked, when Jim was about to like come head to head with the wrench, right? I really feel if he had explained himself better, if there was more raw emotion, if there was more like, when I first saw you, like just something, like I had to meet you, or, I was alone. I felt, but there was none of that. There was no connection that kind of would have made her feel bad. There was just like, okay, I was caught. And then,
yeah,
the relationship dissolved.
Yeah. And the other thing too, is that it doesn't really play into too much of the class differences, aside from the fact that she can get bacon and he can't. He's eating like a protein cube. It's basically what it feels like for breakfast. There's a difference there. Like, she's well brought up. She's cultured. She's well-to-do, clearly. He's not. And at no point did he sit there and try to explain that. Like, we don't see that. It's literally like, hey, I'm going to show her what it's like to float in space, and then I'm going to get some, and then she's going to find out the truth, and then I'm going to be like, oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know, but did they really have to throw the class in, or like the gap, the wage gap? Like, does that really matter?
I think it does. I think it does, because the reason why the Kate Winslet, Leo DiCaprio relationship in Titanic works is because, he's the boy in steerage and she's the girl who's hoping for more out of life than her, kind of seemingly arranged upbringing kind of thing. And, he teaches her how to live and she teaches him how to live more, right? And, or at least, look up. Here could have been the same thing. And then I guess maybe you don't want to do that because you don't want it to be Titanic in space. I get that.
I think, though, just the explanation that he didn't want to be alone.
Yes.
Or that that she somehow completes him. Or that he longed to meet her because he was so intrigued by her writings and by her videos. Like, something. You know what I mean? Give us more.
Yeah. And yeah. I think it is the thing, the fact that, she found out because of Arthur and not because of him. And I think it's one of those things, if he had told her, then maybe it would have been a different outcome and she could have understood. But she had to find out through Arthur, as played by, notwithstanding, Michael Sheen. Sorry, you have to watch Staged. If you listen to the show, you already know where Staged stands. Michael Sheen as Arthur the android. Your thoughts?
Okay, you literally just quoted my text.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God. And notwithstanding Michael Sheen. I was so excited every scene he was in. Every time I saw Arthur, oh my God, I just absolutely I loved his humor. Like, and I think that's what I needed out of this movie, because I keep drawing back to it. I wanted to feel for these characters, but I also wanted to laugh along with them. And I wanted to cry with them and feel alone and feel completely isolated. But I also wanted to find the humor in this situation, and Michael Sheen brought it.
Yeah.
With or without pants.
Now, apparently Michael Sheen has described his role as Arthur as a cross between, and I'm quoting here, a cross between a puppy and a toaster. And I kind of get it.
Oh my God.
But the thing is, though, Michael Sheen was able to put computer logic into Arthur, because of course it is an android. It's an android bartender.
I would say more like C-3PO.
A little bit. But the thing is, Arthur makes the promise to Jim that he won't tell Aurora until Jim says. So Then there's a line of, but then Jim's like, there's no secrets between us. And Arthur's like, oh, really? All of a sudden, computer logic dictates that this all of a sudden can now become a line of dialogue between him and Aurora. So that makes sense. The turn at that point makes sense. I wish there was a point in the script where Arthur, or at least Jim, establishes for us that Arthur cannot leave the bar. Because it kind of, at that point, I kind of wish it'd be like, well, why doesn't Jim get Arthur out of the bar? Why doesn't Arthur, become a companion to Jim? But even the point when they first meet, right? And Jim is, trying to make Arthur understand that, like, the whole reality of it, right? And Arthur's like, well, by that logic, you shouldn't be here, but I am. Point taken. It's very much like you have to get around Arthur's computer logic to understand the reality of kind of what's happening. And I think there's something about Michael Sheen that allows him to be able to create this, it could have been something as simple as just a regular robot bartender, but I think having Michael Sheen in that role brought that gravitas to it, because Jim did need someone to talk to. Otherwise, it was going to be put a handprint on a volleyball all over again. Arthur was the volleyball.
Oh, he very much was. I think a better way that I could explain Arthur's character was like Data on Star Trek.
Yes.
Like he had that wit, even though it was maybe unintentional, or it certainly wasn't planned. It was more programmed.
Right.
You know, I found he was so funny. Like, and it was brilliantly written. Like it was really, and I'm not sure, you know, if it was the script or if it was really Michael Sheen's personality that came through.
See, there's the question though, right? Because sometimes you see an actor on screen and you know them from role A or B or C kind of thing, you know,
like Good Omens,
right? Good Omens and Stage. So when you see Michael Sheen, your instant reaction is going to be, oh, this is going to be a very fun role. Imagine someone has never seen those two shows, but they know Michael Sheen through Prodigal Son. It's gonna be like, oh, there's the psycho as a bartender, right? Like that's how you perceive the actor through the roles that they normally do will be kind of what you, I guess, get your initial perception of the actor and the character that they're playing. Chris Pratt is known for a lot of comedy or big action films. I get it. I understand. But this is not a comedic role. Yes, it's a sci-fi film, and it's, for lack of a better term, a very YA feeling sci-fi film because of the third act. But I don't know if having Chris Pratt in there predisposes you as far as what you should expect out of Jim. Maybe you do need someone who's maybe not necessarily known for, like you put Matt Smith in that role, and your drawbacks are to maybe Doctor Who, maybe House of the Dragon these days. I hope not Charlie Says. But Matt Smith, when he was the Doctor, was able to really switch emotions on a dime. Or even an Arthur Darvill, who played Rory during Matt Smith's turn as the Doctor. Either of those guys would be able to, I think, bring about a more, not visceral, but more tangible feeling of loneliness on the ship. Maybe Chris Pratt wasn't the guy.
I agree. I mean, from the beginning, it was almost kind of like he wakes up with this, like, complete confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I the only person awake? And then when he starts to kind of accept his fate, and I think at that point, I just wanted to see, again, like, not even necessarily comedy, but I wanted to feel more for him before the descent into madness and isolation kicks in. You know, and I just think that my expectations, again, because Chris Pratt is quite funny, you know, in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
But you don't want
quite
funny
enjoyable.
In this.
No, but you want to at least have that humor as a connection. And it was missing the connection.
Right. Well, at least he's not taking a purple crayon and drawing all over the walls. Or was it a green crayon? I can't even remember from the Immaculate Room. Either way, it was a crayon.
See, I thought you meant the movie with the purple crayon. Harold and the Purple Crayon.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that one hasn't released yet. No. I'm talking about the crayon from the Immaculate Room.
Like, wasn't that Shazam?
No and no. Lawrence Fishburne, who played Deck Officer Gus Mancuso, not around for a long time, but definitely for a good time. Your thoughts on him?
Was it really a good time? He was so angry about the tree.
Well, it wasn't a good time for Gus, but good time for the viewers who like Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, here you have someone who is an authority figure, and you need someone with Lawrence Fishburne's, for lack of a better term, gravitas, right? He brings the air of authority with him, even as his character is, spoiler alert, dying in front of them. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it added an interesting dynamic and a very welcome dynamic, because at that point it was just the two of them, and you knew there was like just hate there.
Yeah.
So I think it was exactly what the movie needed to have that pivotal moment, that turnaround, that turning point.
The thing is, you needed that third person to come in. You needed that, almost referee at this point. And there was the scene where he realizes kind of what happened, and he looked at Chris Pratt, and he goes, how long before? And it's like a year. It's like a year all by yourself. But still, damn. Like, that says it all. It really does says it all, because really, and we're going to get to this in a little bit, really, you almost understand a little bit why Jim would do it, why Jim would wake someone up, because, Arthur's only so interesting. I get it. Apparently, there's only basketball and dance battles and swimming pools on this ship. So I understand and appreciate a little bit of it, but I think you needed a character like Lawrence Fishburne as Gus Mancuso to come in and really kind of sit there and say, yeah, bad, maybe justifiable bad, but still bad. But there's more important things like the ship falling apart. So it kind of puts Jim not necessarily in his place, but puts Jim in place. Again, we're not going to talk about Andy Garcia because he was literally there for about 15 seconds and no lines of dialogue whatsoever. So thanks for coming out. The production design, though. This film has some really ridiculously cool moments in it. I mean, the ship design itself, as I'm watching this, I'm like, please tell me they're somehow going to make some weird resort hotel, kind of like the Galactic Star Cruiser was in Disney, and have this be the template for it, because that might be kind of cool as long as it doesn't fall apart. The zero gravity swimming pool scene, though, like, I don't know how they did it. I don't. It was very cool, and literally, you're like, would this actually happen this way? And the funny thing is, apparently they actually took some time and studied zero gravity water tests on the International Space Station, and like John Space apparently has a degree in physics, so there's a lot of thought process that went into the moments in this film with zero gravity and some of the physics behind everything. Like, watching this, were there scenes that stood out to you as like, wow, this is ridiculously cool?
Definitely the float scene at the end. And
Yeah.
I mean, even, oh my God, the explosion where literally like that spacesuit had to have been made of titanium, because there was no
Well, he did have
reason.
the door as a heat shield almost.
No, because it was just blasting straight at him. Like,
Mhm.
he should have been a crispy critter.
Right.
He should have been the burnt bacon. But,
Don't burn the bacon.
well, he should have been crispy.
Burnt bacon is a crime in my country.
I mean, how it wasn't death by 1,000 degrees? Like, anyway.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Like,
No.
to see the flames just.
And I think that's where the third act falters, right? Because the first act, okay, it's Jim alone, and you understand his descent into like a year of solitude and isolation. And then you get the second act, which is I've made a bad choice, but I'm going to try to make the best of it kind of thing. And then you get the turn. But the ending, the resolution, feels kind of YA to me. Feels kind of like a young adult novel, almost. I don't want to say like Twilight-esque kind of thing, because that would be cruel to passengers. But the thing is, it resolved too neatly and too cleanly. Like, if you ask me, and Jim died in that moment from the heat that you said he should have died, and if the last words from Aurora to Jim were, "I forgive you," not this, "I can't live with, I can't go on without you" kind of thing, because Wasn't that long ago that she held a wrench right above his head and she was ready to bash his skull in. And it wasn't that long ago that she was basically accusing him of, in essence, murdering her. I would have understood her forgiving him in that moment. And maybe that's the way the film should have ended. And maybe that's the way the original script ended. I don't know. But the ending felt too popcorn, too PG.
But you know that they eventually had to wind up together. I mean, death aside.
No, because hear me out on this. And maybe this is just the nihilism in me that would love to see this film. So imagine, if you will, right? Chris Pratt, Jim sacrifices himself in that moment. He does. Maybe he's not burnt to a crisp, but he's knocked out of the tether is unlocked. He's floating in space. There's no way to get him, but he can still hear Aurora on the radio, and his actions did save her. And, you know, her last words to him are, "I forgive you." But then the film ends. Jim is dead in space. Okay. He sacrificed himself to save Aurora to try to make up for what he did. But then you're left, and the film ends with Aurora realizing that she's in the same boat that Jim is in, or at least was in, alone for another 88 years. And maybe the film ends on her sitting down at that desk and starting to go through the personnel files because she knows what's ahead, because she realized it after Jim. And then maybe that's a bit more of a morality tale ending, but
I think I really like your ending.
Yeah. Not every film needs a happy ending. This film didn't need a happy ending. It did not. I think it would have been a bit more of a, for lack of a better term, Infinity War ending if maybe it wasn't tied up neatly with a bow. Because life isn't necessarily tied up neatly with a bow. You can't have lingering questions in a film. You don't need to serve it on a silver platter. And yeah, okay, it's a Christmas release. Maybe you don't want to bring the whole house down around the holidays with this sad ending morality tale sci-fi film. Bring you down. But why not? Why not end on a what next? And have the lingering question. And I don't think movies do this enough. Leave the people leaving the theater with something to talk about at dinner. Because dinner and a movie, right? Maybe dinner after movie, maybe we go for dessert. I hear that's nice. But then you have the question, the lingering question of the film, to give people something to talk about. Not everything needs a little bow on it at the end. Leave it as a conundrum for conversation afterwards. But now I'm going to throw this right back at you. Without changing the story, the story is as it is. I'm going to ask you, Carrie. You're Jim. Do you wake someone up so you're not alone?
I do my very best if I have to start my day early to sneak out of the room and make sure that I don't wake you. So I value sleep. I value sleep, and I would never want to take that from you or anyone. Our children, however.
We can say this because we know they don't listen to the podcast.
You know what? It's really hard to say, because, through your intro, I was like, wow, this setup really sounds completely ideal. In a post-COVID world of having just complete space to yourself. And, you know, again, like it would, at first it would be nice and quiet and relaxing, but it would get lonely. It really would.
Yeah. And maybe this is one of those films that maybe we should have covered during the pandemic because, you know, we're very fortunate that we had each other. We had our house full of, you know, little minions running around kind of thing. And, you know, we weren't alone during the pandemic. But I wonder if someone who was by themselves would have a different answer. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, that's being by yourself for a year with no one but an android to talk to. That, I guess it depends on the personality and how much of a people person was Jim, because he didn't have any photos with him. He didn't have any videos with him. You know, we don't know what his thought process was going into this journey. All we know is that Jim is there and he's alone. And after a while, he doesn't want to be alone anymore. And I get that. I understand the need for connection. I understand the need to have someone to talk to. I would be curious. I would be curious if they reworked this film and maybe left it on a cliffhanger, or maybe they turned it into the Castaway in Space kind of thing, where it really is just Jim and his, you know, his loneliness and his despair and his isolation. It's fascinating. I would be curious, dear listeners, what you guys would do. Would you wake up Aurora or somebody so you were not alone? And there's the other thing too, right? Like, from all that we saw, it was only Aurora. It was only Aurora that he considered waking up. Why not somebody else? Why not someone who, you know, maybe kind of like him, so maybe another mechanic? Like, why not wake up other people? Why not? Because it kind of feels like I'm going to wake this girl up because I find her fascinating and I find her attractive, and maybe I'm not confident enough in myself to wake other people up. So then I kind of have her all to myself and hope that, you know, like it really is. It's all just neatly, you know, properly, professionally packaged up like a Christmas time pro packer kind of thing.
But again, the fundamental of that is I'm going to wake up one woman. So it's just going to be myself, Jim, and a woman. Isn't that a bit, as you'd mentioned, stalkerish, a bit awkward, you know?
It's almost like entrapment at that point.
It really is. And she didn't ask to have been woken up early. She didn't ask to be the only other person that Jim can connect with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at that point, what are the options? What if they had completely hated each other right off the bat?
Well, I mean, the other thing too is, you know, yes, him making the Chrysler Building statue for her, so she has something to, you know, the Chrysler Building to look at, so she can write. At no point did she question, how did he know that this would be inspiring to me? How did he know? Like, there are so many red flags on Jim.
Exactly.
Like literally, like they should just watch this film. Dear listeners, I want you to do me a favor. Watch this film. I want you to have a bell beside you. And every time Jim does something that's a straight dating red flag, ring the bell.
Bing. Bing.
Ring the bell. And at the end of the movie, count how many times you rang the bell. Because this is red flag all over the place. Red flag Jim at this point. All right. So now comes time, and we don't really have many people to kind of choose from here, but we're going to ask anyway. So, Carrie, who is your MVP of Passengers?
Without a doubt, notwithstanding Michael Sheen.
See, I knew you were going to pick him.
I had to.
Because you can't not pick Michael Sheen.
He was brilliant.
He was.
You know what? And it was so nice to see him without the crazy hair from stage.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's my bartender, though, I would definitely be drinking a lot of beer from that bartender. The problem with Michael Sheen, and sorry, not really the problem with Michael Sheen. The problem with Arthur and the way it's done is that at times the way and how fast he moved around, it really felt almost cartoonish at that point. And I get sometimes you need a bit of a levity, but it took away from the role that Arthur was supposed to be in that for a year, he's the only source of conversation and camaraderie for Jim. And maybe you want to remove the humanity out of that role, but at times it felt a touch much. But that's not Michael Sheen's fault. That's just the puppy toaster, scooting about. My MVP, though, is Jennifer Lawrence. And at first, it wasn't going to be. At first, I was like, no, notwithstanding Michael Sheen. We're all good. But it was that moment when she realizes what happened and just that look of abject horror. Like, that second act sold it for me. Jennifer Lawrence turned this film from a YA adventure in space to visceral morality tale.
You know what? I agree with you, but I'm going to add the amendment that at the end of the movie, when she starts to realize, and she's like, I'm coming for you, Jim. I'm going to go and get you. Like, that was intensely beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
She played her part so well, but by the end you can just feel for her.
Yeah.
And it was so well done.
Yeah, no. I mean, the movie benefited from Jennifer Lawrence's presence and performance for sure. Michael Sheen brought a ton to it as well. The puppy toaster. Also, tell me Puppy Toaster wouldn't be a cool band name.
I guess.
Right?
Wait, no.
Maybe?
Puppy Toaster?
Toaster Puppy?
It's like a toaster strudel.
Maybe sort of. Quite possibly. I'm sure we could work it some way.
Or like a hot dog. Like a toaster strudel hot dog.
Ew.
A puppy toaster.
Ew and wrong.
Microwavable hot dog.
And on that happy note, dear listeners, I want to know what you guys would do, though, in that situation. Would you wake somebody up knowing that it's basically a death sentence for them?
Okay. Same question to you.
See, I don't know if I could wake somebody up. The other thing, though, is that I'm sure I could find ways to amuse myself. I'd probably talk the circuits off of Arthur, admittedly, and that bar would not have a single drop of booze left in it.
See, that's the question. Who restocks the bar?
I really don't know. Because, if people are only supposed to be woken up 4 months in advance, but that's 5,000 people for 4 months eating and drinking. So you have to think that there is a ton of food and beverage and whatever stocked up in the ship.
But not enough to, maybe not enough to withstand for 80 years. So what would have happened?
One person maybe, though.
But again, he didn't have enough credits for real food, so he was eating like tofu.
Yeah. Oh my God, if you fed me tofu for a year,
I would sign up for that.
I'll tell you right now, I would not wake anyone up, but I would jump off the damn ship. I would be out the airlock faster than you can possibly imagine if you had to feed me tofu bricks for a year. I'd be like, Arthur, get me all liquored up. Give me your finest swill, and then I'm going to go jump out the airlock if I have to eat another freaking tofu brick. And the thing is, I wouldn't wake anyone up because I don't think anyone else should eat the tofu brick either. I'm saving them 89 years of tofu bricks. I'm a savior at that point. My sacrifice will be heralded on the new world for eons to come. God bless the man who didn't wake us up and made us eat the tofu bricks for 89 years. Also, and now that I'm thinking about this, so they got back together. Okay, cool. Just the two of them and their tree and their booze swilling android. Did they not have kids? That's a question.
Wait, was there not a line at the end that it was like, it basically alluded to that they started their own family or their own.
But the thing is, though, if they got to wait 88 years, right? Let's say they even waited like a year or two to have kids, right? Or at least a kid. That kid's going to be, about 85, 86 years old by the time everyone else is woken up properly, right? Some old guy sitting in the middle of the atrium in the tree and everything else is growing around him, probably all out of booze because Arthur just got him drunk. It doesn't answer all the questions of after the fact. So it's a lovely scene to end on. The tree basically sprouting foliage through the entire atrium. It's a lovely image, but there are lingering questions. I have many questions. None of them were answered. All right, guys, you know the drill. If there's a movie out there that you think is unfairly maligned or is just so bad that there is no way in a floating 120-year-long journey spaceship that there's anything good to say about it, hit us up on social media at NotThatBadcast or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, make sure you check out all of our other shows. Until next time, she's Carrie, I'm Jay. Neither of us are a toaster puppy. You guys are awesome. This is It's Not That Bad, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.